Good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Joshua. I'm going to be your presenter today. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. It's promptly 1 p.m. Eastern Time today. Before we get started on our topic today, which is setting up direct deposit in Church Windows Payroll, a few technical things. We're here till 1:20 Eastern Time. I'm going to wrap up the topic at 1:20, at least as close as I can, out of respect for your time. Thank you for joining us today. If you have questions, please type those into the questions portion of the webinar control panel. I'll try my best to keep an eye on those and see what I can't do to answer those during the event. If not, I'll certainly be happy to stick around and get those answered at the very end. Please keep the questions on topic, meaning about setting up direct deposit for Church Windows Payroll. If you have other questions about the software, our support staff are available via telephone or email until 5 p.m. Eastern Time today to answer your questions. Certainly please let us know. We'll be happy to, our techs will be happy to discuss that with you. So let's see here. So then if you have questions, please type those into the questions. I said that before. Sorry, we're recording today's event. We have a video out on the website already on setting up direct deposit, but this one will be produced. It's on the current version of Payroll. It'll probably replace the one that's out on the website here that's out there now, sometime today, maybe tomorrow, before the end of the week for sure. You can always revisit this same topic. We're not going to be covering the using direct deposit to pay employees today. There is a video out on the website on that. We will set that up as another future event on another future live webinar for Church Windows Payroll. So we're just talking about setup today, okay? Today's topic is taken from Payroll Workbook number 102, P102, pages 2 through 4. So if you don't have, or if you have P102, please turn to that very first page is there after the table of contents to see what I'm using as the guide for the payroll or for the webinar today for the printed material. If you don't have the workbooks, you can purchase those directly from the Church Windows website under the webinar, the workbooks page. You can purchase those there, okay? That is what I'm using today for today's webinar event. Okay. So we might even wrap things up before 1:20, folks, depending on how long this takes to get through this, okay? So if you have 102, turn to page 2. We're going to kind of talk through those first few paragraphs on this real quick. So setting up direct deposit in Church Windows Payroll is a pretty simple process, okay? Basically, nothing in our payroll system communicates directly with the church's bank, okay? So there's nothing that gets nothing that Church Windows Payroll does online that basically connects over and sends over the information to your bank's system, okay? But what our payroll system does do is it produces what's called an NACHA-compliant file for each of the pay dates that you calculate pay and your employees are paid who are opting for direct deposit, okay? Again, an NACHA-compliant file, okay? That then, when created, is then submitted to the church's bank in any number of ways. It can occur that way. And then when that's then imported into the bank's website, then the money gets transferred from the church's bank account into the employee's bank account for each one of their net pays on the specified date, okay? And, of course, payroll produces a pay stub that you can then send or distribute to each one of those employees, that shows what they're paid. It looks like a paycheck. We're not going to see that today, but that's what it does. But the first step, as the page 2 on the topic talks about there on page 2 of P102, first step to initiating the direct deposit is to contact the church's bank and talk to them about that, okay? Basically you got to find out, do you support us sending you a file that can pay employees electronically, okay? Step number 1, do you support us sending you the file? Question number 2, how do we transmit the file to you, assuming they do? Okay. I mean, if they don't support you sending this file to import, then basically it won't work, and there's nothing that Church Windows Payroll or Church Windows can do about that whatsoever. But if they do, again, how do we transmit the file to you? Typically there's a couple different methods or some methods that would occur where they would upload the file. You can either upload the file through a secure link on their website. Just FYI, that's what most banks will do now. They give you a secure link or page to upload that. The other option could be that you would email it to them. Like as a file attachment to an email, it simply produces a .dat file. And the third option would be that you put it onto a flash drive or a thumb drive and physically walk it into the bank. Okay, that would be less likely, certainly in the days of COVID-19 now. But hopefully it's going to be one of those two other options. Uploading it through a secure link on their website, that's what most banks would probably do, or you email it to them as a file attachment. Okay? If the bank has another method and you don't use, they would say, like a bill pay process or something like that, you would use perhaps what their system sets up. I'm sorry, the third and final question you have to ask the bank is there a fee associated with that? Okay, so, if there is a fee associated with each one of these transactions, is that something that the church is willing to pay, okay, on behalf of your employees? It could be a few cents for each transaction to, I've heard it costing as much as $1 or more even for each one of the transactions. So again, some very important questions that you have to ask your bank before even going through the process of, setting it up, okay? Because again, those are the kind of technical questions that need to be answered that Church Windows Payroll doesn't have the answers for. Church Windows doesn't know until you contact your bank about that, okay? If they don't support that, there's no requirement that you set that direct deposit function up if you're not transmitting the file to the bank, that our payroll system produces. You could go ahead and just set them up as regular employees, go in and do your bill pay process, on a per pay basis, and then just print, check stubs from Church Windows Payroll to distribute to your employees, okay? There are other creative ways to be able to set this up if the bank still doesn't accept the NACHA file that our payroll system produces, okay? But as the further down the page there talks about on our document here, our workbook pages, is it talks about the three different options for how that file would be transmitted to the bank. Okay, the second step, as it further talks about down the page, is you've got to collect the information from your employees for their bank information. Church Windows Payroll doesn't have their bank information, and so what we recommend now, and we're going to jump into our payroll system now, is if we click under Payroll, right down here at the very bottom of the list, hopefully everybody should see on my screen at the very bottom, Print EFT Authorization Form. Okay? So when we open that up, it opens up essentially just an EFT authorization agreement for direct deposit. So you would want to print this and distribute this to each one of your employees who's opting for direct deposit. It's ask for employer name, employer ID number, and then it's basically asking them, to authorize that they're going to pay them either to checking account or savings account. Right now, folks, in this current version of Payroll, it only supports direct deposit to one, either a checking or a savings account, but it can't be split. That may be something that our payroll rewrite, that we're expecting out sometime mid-next year may do, okay? So then you want to complete this. So it says the bank name, the bank address, the city, state, zip code. Then this is really the most important information is the employee's bank routing number and account number for the account that they've checked, okay, and their signature and ID number. Now, not all of this is required. It's just that if it's applicable or if you have this or they have this information, then they should complete it. But definitely the church name, the account number, the routing number and the account number, and of course the employee's signature, just to keep on file to verify that if there are any problems, that the employee did agree to receive their pay via direct deposit. Okay, so then once you have the EFT authorization form entered, then you would go in, and again, it's not required for all employees, folks. Some can receive checks and some can be paid via direct deposit. You would then go into the data setup in our payroll system, and then we would go to employee file, and then you would choose, the employee, whoever it is, doesn't matter which one. You would choose the employee. We would go to the General 2 tab down here at the very bottom. So let me get out my highlighter. Right down here, General 2, right here at the bottom center. And then once we click on the General 2 tab, we're going to scroll right down to the very bottom of that General 2, and you're going to see the check mark, Use Direct Deposit. Okay? So once I check that box, I'm telling the system that I'm enabling direct deposit for this employee file, for this employee, and then I would enter the employee's routing and account number based on the type of account that they had specified on their authorization form. Okay? That's where then you would enter their routing and account number. Okay? So right down here at the very bottom, it talks about EFT detail record individual ID field. So until we've heard back from the response to the EFT pre-notification file that we're going to discuss here momentarily, we're going to leave that as not required by your financial institution. That is the default for most NACHA compliant files. If for some reason the file that Church Windows Payroll produces is bounced or is rejected by the bank's, the church's bank system for that, we might need to look at doing one of these other options like Social Security number or use employee number or enter text for individual ID. But 95 times out of 100, the not required by your financial institution is okay. So again, leave that as not required until we know differently. So you would enter the routing and account number and then click apply and okay. I'm sorry, I've got an employee in here who has that already set up. So we're going to go back to here. We're going to go to General 2, go down to the bottom. We notice here routing number and account number are entered with the account type, and again, not required is selected. Okay, then we click apply, go to the next employee, go to the General 2 tab, scroll down, enter their account type, routing and account number as well. Okay? So then that's where you would enter that, the employee's information. So once we've clicked apply and OK through that, where you would enter the church's account information is here under System Administration, System Profile, and at the top, the EFT ACH Info tab at the top. Then we notice right down here, it says the company ID, use tax ID or other ID, routing number and account number. This is where the church's bank account information is entered. Account number, account name, routing number, organization name, etc. Okay? And again, use balance debit credit entries in EFT file is not going to be checked. And again, it can be, but only if the bank specifies that that's required. Okay? Once we have the church's account information in here, and this is probably then what we're going to discuss here now at the bottom of page 2 into 3 and subsequently 4 here, folks, is probably the next most important part of the direct deposit setup function, okay? So right here under payroll, we see the option further down right above the print authorization form, the one that says create EFT pre-notify file. This is really, really important, folks. This is a test run of the direct deposit file. There's no net pay, no money's changing hands, okay? But this is the only way that you're going to know if the church's bank's information is receiving the information, importing it, and subsequently sending the information to the employee's bank's success. A test run. So when we click on the EFT pre-notify file, create EFT pre-notify file, it asks us, what date do we want this to be to be transmitted, the information to be transmitted. Typically, folks, the lead time, you'll need to find out the lead time that your bank requires to receive the file in advance of the date that employees need to be paid, okay? So, here in this case, it probably wouldn't be today. It would probably have to be at least tomorrow, and it might be even 2 or 3 days out ahead. So we're going to say The bank wants a lead time of at least 2 to 3 days, so we're going to say we're going to make this the 14th, okay? So we're going to make that Friday. So then once we've entered that, we go to next. We're going to leave it as all of our employees. It knows who's direct deposit set up for direct deposit and who isn't, okay? So then we go to next, and it shows our 2 employees. Notice net pay on the right here. Let me get my highlighter again. Right here, net pay shows 0. No money is changing hands. But it's got all of the other information in the EFT file that we need in order to be able to know if this information is set up correctly, okay? So right here it says click Finish to create EFT pre-notification transaction file for employees and settlement dates shown above. We're going to click Finish. So now it says EFT pre-notification file has been created, all right? So now, we would now, in order to be able to generate that file and send it to the bank, we would go now to Payroll and copy EFT file, and this is what you would do during the regular pay process, folks, too. And right here, here's our August 14th pre-notify file, okay? So we would browse to where we want to save that file. You know, maybe you put a special folder on your computer for that, or, you know, we drop it onto our desktop, or, you know, wherever you want it to go, okay? We're just going to choose desktop for the time being. So then I click desktop. I then click OK. It changes the copy to path, and I simply click browse. Then I simply click copy file. Sorry, my fault. So I click copy file. So now it says file successfully copied to C users Josh, you know, my path, and then the file name of EFT 200814200814.dat. That's exactly what's going to happen when you're actually paying these folks. So then, now, when I close out or minimize my payroll system back to my desktop, I've now got a file right here on my desktop called EFT 200814.dat. Okay? That's now the file then that I would then upload to my bank, and they would import that. Again, this is just the pre-notify file option, folks. So what the bank then would do is they would import that file, okay? They'll import that file. They'll do whatever they do with it, basically what they would do normally with your regular pay when money is changing hands. And then, you know, in however long it takes, you know, an hour, you know, a few hours, a day, a couple days, they would then get back to you, and they would say, yeah, the file's good. We heard back from all of the employees' banks successfully. They received the information fine, or they would get back to you and say, no, the file was rejected, at which point then they would need to let you know what failed about the file, okay? Payroll doesn't know, okay? Every bank system is a little bit different. So the church's bank would need to let you know what was rejected about the file, okay? It might be that the employee's ID record need to be changed or identified differently. So you would go back into the employee file, go to the General 2 tab, scroll down, make the desired necessary changes under the EFT detail record, again, if specified by the bank. And you would make that change for all of the employees. It may be that it's something with the file type and the file format as it's created, okay? At which point then we might need to go back into our system administration, system profile. We might need to go back to the EFT ACH info and check this use balance debit and credit entries in the EFT file, only if the bank specifies that. Or we might even need to go into the EFT ACH overrides, make the desired changes, again, based on what the bank specifies is wrong with the file, click OK, apply and OK. And then, again, if it fails the first time, go back into Payroll and create a new EFT pre-notify file and send that to the bank. You can keep creating and sending these EFT pre-notify file, folks, options until the bank comes back to you and make the changes until the bank comes back and says, yep, thumbs up, all's good. All the information came back from the employee's bank successfully. Once that's the case, then we know that when we do actually need to pay our employees electronically, that that whole process is going to go smoothly and cleanly. So anytime you set up a new employee for receiving direct deposit, I would do the create EFT pre-notify file, okay? Even if it was just for that one employee, just to make sure that there were no problems. I've had folks who've had problems, and it can be problematic. So just make sure you're doing this create EFT pre-notify file option, folks. It'll help. It'll relieve your stress. It'll be less stressful. You'll know everything's right. Then you can start paying your folks electronically.